Color doesn't exist. We never went to the moon. Everything I know is a lie. No, we went to the moon. We did. But the color thing is a bit more difficult. Does it exist? What is color? What is light? How does it work? What's going on in our brains? I'm here to try and pull things apart a little bit so we can get a better understanding. Because understanding is a thing that we use to try and make the best art we can. Right? So, let's begin. Color. It's all around us. Every day we look at things and they have a color. We take it for granted. But do you know what's actually going on there? Basically what's going on is different matter has different properties to it, right? Different reflective properties. And the sun is emitting a white light. And the white light in that sense is actually all colors of the visual spectrum combined. So think of all of the different colors as being a single wave that's got a different frequency to its peaks and troughs. Okay? And if you look at the violets and the blues, they're going to be really tightly packed, very, very dense, like a spring coiled up. And if you look at the reds, they're going to be long, drawn out, wavy things like rolling waves at the beach. When you combine them all together, you get a thick bar, which is white light. It's just all of those frequencies, all stacked up one on top of the other. It also has all the other, ultraviolet and stuff like that we can't see. But we're just going to ignore that stuff because we're talking about this just as it relates to art. So we have this white light and it contains all the visible colors. It comes from the sun and it shoots down and interacts with matter. When it interacts with matter, the materials that the light interacts with absorb certain wavelengths, right? That's why if you go out and touch something that is black, that's been in the sun for a while, it's very warm, right? Because it's absorbed all of the energy out of the light. And it's not bouncing any color back at us. It's absorbed it all. But if you put something white in the sun, it just bounces off the white light because it's just not absorbing many of the frequencies. Okay, so it's not absorbing the energy of the sunlight. So you can go up and touch a white object during the middle of a hot, hot day when it's been sitting in the sun, and it's still relatively cold. So if you put something that is red into an environment with natural sunlight coming at it, it's just absorbing all of the other wavelengths in that white light and shooting back red, okay? But if you're seeing that red light is being projected into the environment. If you were to then put another white board next to that red board, it would pick up the red light that's bouncing off the red board because the light is bouncing around the environment. And this is a reductive process. It's never going to regain those other wavelengths and become white light again. It's impossible. The light will come down, it'll bounce around and slowly become absorbed into all of the different materials in the environment. And each time that light bounces off, it has fewer and fewer of those wavelengths. So the light that it can emit onto other surfaces is going to be limited to that small amount of the visual spectrum that is remaining after its initial interaction. So imagine you're in a room with just red light coming from a red light globe. Okay? And that light is bouncing around in the room, but you have an object in there that is green. Okay, a nice, bright, vibrant lime green. But the red light that is coming out of the light globe doesn't have any of the frequencies that make up green, so it's just going to be red. So what color is this lime green object? Because when we put it underneath a red light, it will just become red. So it's not a lime green object. So what is color? Does it have a color? Well, my friends, this is where it gets really weird, okay? Because color isn't real. It's not a real thing. It's just not a thing that exists, okay? They're different wavelengths, sure. We see that as color, sure. But it's only colorful in the fact that it is being perceived as color. Perception. It's all subjective, and it's all in your head, and it's all a lie. There may be some people out there who disagree, and I mean no offense with what I'm saying. You're free to believe whatever you like, but As far as I'm aware, we are animals, and we evolved under strong pressure of competition with all the other organisms and the environment. Okay? It was crucial that we were able to get the best information about our surroundings so that we could survive long enough to reproduce. So, we developed different senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And then our brain is there to process all of this information. Think of it like a kind of amazing computer with software on it. Let's call it perception version 350 million. And all of that sensory information is being fed into the software. And it's taking that information and it's aggregating it, putting it all together. It's taking things that are useless and pushing them aside. It's taking things that are important to our survival and bringing them to our attention. And it's combining all of these different senses into our stream of consciousness, the way we perceive the world. This stream of consciousness is not like a video recorder. It's not sitting there taking exactly what is going on and just playing it like a movie. It's filtering stuff. It's exaggerating things. Everything you think you know is just your brain's best attempt at sorting through the chaos that surrounds us. But what does this have to do with art? What does this have to do with color? Why am I talking about all of this? Well, it's simple. As artists, it's our job to try and convey something, to try and create an image that evokes these senses. But if these senses are so subjective and they're looking at certain information and throwing other information away, how do we best place elements in a scene to feel naturally part of the scene and also bring attention to the places that are more important and move attention away from the places that are less important? It's so important to know how to make things stand out and how to make them go away. Have you ever noticed when you look at some really fantastic art, you look right where the artist wants you to look immediately? Then your eye kind of drifts around the image, but it's not so interested by the small, not so detailed stuff around the edges. It keeps leading you around and back to the thing that matters. That's someone who understands perception, who understands how to play with your senses, how to engage them, you know? And the ultimate goal is to try and make it feel like you're engaging more than one sense, to make someone look at your scene and feel the warmth of the light, to hear the birds chirping, to smell the beautiful damp forest. You know, if we can try and get as close to achieving that as possible, we're really doing something right. Now, this has been quite a talk about things unrelated directly to art, and I promised you guys color theory. Even though color doesn't exist, we think it does. So I'm going to try my best to explain to you guys, at least my best understanding of how this stuff works. So let's get started. This subhuman studio-dwelling troglodyte has agreed to be our participant today. Say hi. Hi. And I chose this picture from a previous video that I made. I did it at night and it was under the orange light. It's sort of like a warm fluorescent. And it was lighting the scene with just the wavelengths of light that are emitted by that warm light fluorescent. So everything has this very strong orange tone to it. But you can still, by looking at this image, make out a variety of colors. And I promise you that those greens and blues and things like that within the image, they're not green or blue. Your brain is just telling you that it is, right? It's trying to bring that to your attention. It says, hey, this is a different color. That might be important to your survival, right? And even though it doesn't have the full spectrum of the white light available to tell you that, your brain will just make sure it looks as close to that as it possibly can. It's not going to feel bad about lying to you, because if you don't see that as blue, that could be the difference between you quickly running away or being eaten by a tiger. Okay? Your brain is trying to help you here. but it's making it really difficult for us artists to break down what's going on, because we need to play within these boundaries, these strange rules that the brain is just bending, right? The brain is changing everything on us. How do we keep consistency? How do we figure out how to put the right color down? If that's not blue, how do we know? And how do we know what color to put in there? We don't want to guess. It might look like crap. We'll know it feels unnatural. And our brain will tell us it feels unnatural. So if you put the blue down in there, your brain's going to be like, oh my God, whoa, there's something super dangerous over there. You know? And it's going to stick out like a sore thumb because it thinks it could be a threat. As weird as that sounds. How about I just show you? Okay? Boom. Look at that. That doesn't feel natural, and your brain is telling you. It's going, oh my God, what is that? Look out. Okay, and we don't want that in our art. We don't want people to have that reaction, right? We want it to feel somewhat natural. And then maybe we have some spots where we want this to happen. And if we want this to happen, let's be very careful and selective, okay? Because it's quite an effect, isn't it? Like, it's glaring and garish. So if we're going to do it, we're going to have to be very careful and know exactly how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and where we're putting it. Now, how do we pick the right blue for this situation? I know that painting is blue. I know that's a painting I did of Mount Fitzroy the night that I got back from my honeymoon. And I know exactly what that blue is because I have the painting right in front of me. So I'm going to use that color wheel on the side to show you exactly how I would go about finding that blue. Because it's not a blue, it's a gray. And here's how you do it. So we need to look at the color wheel. Now I've got this one here where all of the colors merge in the middle to gray. And that's important because that's kind of useful as a reference for mixing colors. And that's what we're going to do. And I really encourage people to actually go out and try and mix these colors with actual paints. I know that helped me a lot. It was the time when I actually feel like I learned the most about colors, when I had just pigments and I had to put them together to make the colors I needed. It's a really good exercise. You have to think about colors in a different way. I highly recommend it. Anyway, first thing to do is to pick a color that you think is the kind of average light color that is coming in and affecting all of the colors within this scene. And that's some sort of orange in this case. Then we need to find the blue color that we know that to actually be. Okay? And I think this one's a little bit dark. The color wheel only has one value. But anyway, so it's a bit lighter, something like that. Then we have 2 points on the color wheel and we need to make a line between the two. And it's going to be a mix between these two colors. But our gamut, like the colors that actually exist within our scene, are going to be something like that-ish. Maybe not these magentas down here, but anyway, something roughly like this. So let's say around about here. Okay? So I think this is the color. I think this is blue in our scene. Okay? This color. It's hard to believe, right? That this could be blue, but look. See that? Blue. Blue. Your blue is yellow. How much does that mess with your head? Look at that. Drag it off the side. Can you see that? It looks blue within the frame of the picture and then it suddenly goes brown. That's a bit thick and it's not working. I think the more you break the illusion, the more your brain notices it's an illusion. It changes it. Isn't this interesting? Your brain is messing with you. Your brain is changing the colors. Colors aren't real. They don't exist. Now, what if we check this purple here? I know this to be purple. So first thing is to grab that ambient orange warm light. And then we pick the magenta purple color that I know this to be. It's kind of round about there. Draw the line between them. Now, this color is actually closer to red, closer to the color of the light. So it's going to be more saturated. So drag that across a bit. The colors are only going to be really different when they're complementary or opposite on the color wheel. Because this one's got a bit of red in it, it's going to be closer, a bit darker. The color wheel only has one value. Let's try that. That's pretty good. That's almost spot on. That is the color of that magenta purple on the shirt. It'll take some getting used to think about things this way, but it's not too complicated. And if you just take a photo that has an obvious color sort of dominating it, and just play around with it a bit. Pick colors out, chuck them on the white background, do things like that, and try and figure out what's going on. Eventually your brain will start to see the colors for what they are. You can kind of break that illusion, or you can at least know that it's happening and try and compensate with your color selections. All that needs to be done now is for you to go and experiment and try and figure this out for yourself. Try and get comfortable with the subjective nature of colors and the fact that they don't really exist, and that they only exist as relationships to one another. And it's going to become exaggerated by your brain, and you need to find a natural place that feels good for you, something that suits your aesthetic, and feels harmonious. Okay, it doesn't need to be exactly reality. How do you see it? How do you best describe the subjective nature of vision itself, of colors and reality? And that, we don't know what each other sees when we look. We can't get inside someone else's head. But if you work very hard with art, you can get to a point where you can kind of show people a little bit of how you see the world, right? And maybe you do want to exaggerate things in interesting ways, and because they're the things that you notice, that your perception sees. So you take those elements and you make them more saturated. You show people how you see the world and where you want them to look. Open up a window to your subjective reality and let people see it. Now I'm going to finish this video off with a couple illusions, a couple interesting ways to break the illusion of perception. And the first one is this image by James Gurney. Now, go and pick up Color and Light if you haven't got it already. That's his book where he explores all of these different lighting situations and color theory. It's fantastic. Essential for every artist who wants to get into imaginative realism, I'd say. So these two squares, they're the same. Okay? They look different because the lighting conditions are different, but these two squares are the same color. Look at that. Then you put it onto the white background and it's actually this color. Okay? Color is relative to color around it. It's all subjective. Now, this last one, this one is more just a test to show you what your brain is doing to the colors. Okay? Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but I'm just going to ask you to stare at this black dot. Stare at it. Try not to blink. Don't look away. Just stare at it. Keep focusing on the dot. Okay? We're going to look at this thing for about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute. What's happening? Can you feel it kind of buzzing around the edges? Is it weird and becoming desaturated and mushing around? Some strange effects. Now let's see what your brain's actually doing. Boom. Look at that. Where did those colors come from? I just made the screen white. Your brain is adding that color. Okay, it's confused. It's not used to looking at something like this. And it's not just in this strange, very specific circumstance. Walk into a brightly lit room and just sort of stare for a while and then close your eyes. You'll notice that it doesn't just go black straight away. There's all these bizarre little after images that sort of float around in your vision. And your brain is adding those colors to the scene. Almost like on the monitor of your computer, there's a little display settings menu, right? And it's balancing the amount of red, green, and blue. Your eyes have got like receptors in them that pick up red, green, and blue, and it balances them. There, see, I did it to you again. Sorry. But have a look. Those colors are different than what they were on the color wheel. They're almost opposite. Almost. It's just balancing the image, trying to make it seem more relatable, trying to exaggerate things that it thinks are important and push other things aside. And if we can understand that the brain does this, we can use that in our art to draw attention to the things that we want people to look at and to make them gloss over the things that aren't important. Think of it like composing a piece of music. You're playing in a certain key, in a certain scale where all of the notes fit together. But if you were to strum a chord, even though it was made up of many different notes, one note comes through true, while the others simply support it. And that's how you should think about your colours.